Change doesn't always occur in an instant. It can take years, even centuries, for a society to come to terms with its own moral shortcomings. Sometimes those who stand up for what they believe in aren't always remembered, but their acts of courage live on, and in this case, brought a nation one step closer to equality. It was a sweltering Sunday morning in New York City on July 16, 1854. Elizabeth Jennings was running late to church, and during that time, the city was bustling with the clamor of horse-drawn streetcars. But not everyone was allowed to ride these streetcars. You see, they had restrictions, and even though New York had abolished slavery in 1827, segregation was still deeply woven into the fabric of society. Elizabeth was an educated woman from a well-respected family. Devoutly religious and being the church organist, she could not be late to the service. So Elizabeth and her friend Sarah Adams dashed down the city streets in order to make it to church on time. They saw a streetcar in the distance and motioned for it to stop. They rushed aboard, unaware of which passengers would be accepted. But as they entered the streetcar to pay their fare, the conductor stopped them and insisted they get off and wait for the next car. She said she was late for church and couldn't wait for another car. But the conductor wouldn't listen and insisted again that she get off. Elizabeth, however, stood her ground, refusing to budge. The conductor relented and said that she could board the streetcar as long as no other passengers were offended by her presence. Elizabeth, now insulted, said, "I'm a respectable person born and raised in New York. I don't know where you were born, but you are a good-for-nothing impudent fellow for insulting decent persons while on their way to church." The conductor loudly informed her that he was a proud Irish immigrant and threatened to throw her out of the car, but Jennings insisted that he wouldn't lay a hand on her. At that moment, he grabbed her, but she quickly clutched onto a nearby curtain. He pulled at her until she lost her grip and pushed her out of the car. Nearby citizens started to notice the skirmish and gathered around to witness what was happening. But as the conductor attended to his frightened horses, Elizabeth climbed right back on. The conductor saw this. "You shall sweat for this." As they rode, he saw a police officer and flagged him down. The officer came aboard and ignored what Elizabeth had to say, throwing her to the ground and ruining her Sunday best. After the confrontation, Elizabeth got her father involved, who used his connections to make sure that this injustice would not go unnoticed. He reached out to a powerful friend of the family, Frederick Douglass, who printed the story, and the incident soon gathered national attention. Rallies were held, a new group, the Black Legal Rights Association, was formed, and soon after, the Jennings family filed a lawsuit against the railway company. Her father began to search for legal counsel that would help them in their case, and hired 24-year-old Chester Arthur to represent them. On the day of the trial, Elizabeth found herself face to face with an all-white, all-male jury. It seemed impossible that she would win, but the politically gifted Arthur delivered a convincing case, and remarkably, the verdict returned in her favor. Her victory would signify an important shift in civil rights that would occur over the next 100 years. Although the story of Elizabeth Jennings remains largely forgotten, her personal experience would affect the lives of progressive thinkers like Frederick Douglass or the 21st President of the United States, Chester Arthur. You see, it takes the actions of courageous people to effect change, no matter the cost. And 100 years later, another woman, Rosa Parks, would take a stand against segregation by refusing to surrender her seat, reigniting the fight for equality once sparked by Elizabeth Jennings.